St. Paul, initially called Saul of Tarsus, was not decreed to be an apostle by Jesus. After the death of Jesus and before the turn of the century, the 12 apostles went throughout the Roman Empire to preach Christianity. St. Paul did the same, calling himself an apostle even though Jesus did not choose him personally. Nevertheless, apostle is Roman for mission, and since Paul spread the mission, he deserved to bear the title of apostle. From Christianity's first appearance among the apostles of Jesus Christ in the first century, the number of Christians grew exponentially. By the Epic of St. Paul, the Christian church had spread from Jerusalem in Palestine to Asia Minor, Greece, and Rome. In becoming a trans-regional religion in an inhomogeneous world, the growing number of Christian congregations combined local pagan religious traditions with their concepts of Christ, the Son of God, and their practices of worshiping a single God. This dynamic presented some problems and raised questions among those who converted from polytheistic pagan beliefs to the monotheism of Christianity. In his letters to distant Christian communities, St. Paul tried to answer the congregants' questions to bring them in line with Christ's message as Paul himself understood it. In addition to conveying insight into his beliefs, St. Paul's letters also offer a wealth of knowledge about the earlier days of Christianity. Christianity, like its forerunner, monotheistic Judaism, began as a religion of a book. The two religions shared several characteristics. However, Christianity was far more orthodox and liberal in its approach toward Gentiles or non-Jews. Christianity's lenient attitude toward Gentiles sparked controversy, and a rift began to untether Christianity from Judaism. The man who defined Christian ideas on the issue was Saul of Tarsus, better known by his Roman name of Paul, now regarded as the most important individual of the apostolic age. According to the Acts of the Apostles, Paul was one of the early persecutors of Christians. He was sent to Damascus and other major cities to arrest the followers of Christ and bring them back to Jerusalem to meet justice. But on his travels, Jesus appeared to him and made him blind. One of Christ's disciples, Ananias of Damascus, restored his sight. Paul soon converted and started spreading the gospel. The New Testament has 27 books, of which St. Paul authored 14. These are known as the Pauline epistles. Most of these were likely written by his students in his name, but at least 7 of them have been authenticated as being Paul's work. In around 50 CE, the Council of Jerusalem was summoned. Its main goal was to resolve the issue of the Gentiles once and for all. St. Paul met with the leaders of the Christian church, namely Peter, James, and John, and discussed the church's stance. Paul's opinion was highly regarded at this point, and he was chosen to spread the message among the Gentiles. But Paul did much more than that. To appeal to the non-Jews, he stripped the Gospels of all Jewish characteristics, making it more attractive to everyone. Paul saw Christianity as a liberation from the strict laws of the Jewish faith, and he believed it was enough to have faith in Jesus to receive salvation. In his opinion, obedience to the law was not necessary. Paul's personal experience might have instigated his abandonment of the Judaic law. He was obedient to the law in the days before he converted, and under the law, he persecuted the Christians. Perhaps in realizing his mistake, he also realized that the strict Jewish law contradicted his newfound faith in Jesus. Surprisingly, Peter also spoke positively about the Gentiles and expressed his belief that both Jews and non-Jews were saved through the grace of Jesus. By this, he meant that no matter their differences, both groups equally loved and respected the Lord and achieved salvation through Christ. The Council of Jerusalem decided to allow the Gentiles exemption from some Jewish laws, such as circumcision. However, many other questions were raised during the debate. It was decided that some laws had to be obeyed, even by Gentiles, such as not consuming animal blood or engaging in fornication. Thus, the unity of the Christian church was preserved, and many traditionalists were soothed. Not all Jewish Christians accepted the decision of the First Council of Jerusalem and continued their efforts to bring the Gentiles around and make them obey the Jewish laws. But they were fighting a losing battle. The number of Gentiles was far greater than the traditionalists. The church accepted Paul's interpretation of the Gospels, and officially, the church was no longer an exclusive Jewish institution. At this point in Christianity, the church became accepting of all humanity, a crucial historical moment. Even though Paul had opened the gates of Christianity to all, Gentiles and their conversion was still a hot-button topic. The consensus of Christian leaders in Jerusalem was unprejudiced toward new converts, but some Jews did not want to share everyday meals with them. Even St. Peter, who mostly agreed with the views of St. Paul regarding the Gentiles, did not want to join the common table. Paul confronted Peter in a public dispute known as the Incident at Antioch. The result of the confrontation remains uncertain. The Catholics believe that Paul won and that Peter realized his mistake, but some scholars disagree. Paul never claimed victory in his writings and soon left Antioch, never returning, as he was unwanted there. Paul was aware that the future of the church lay with the Gentiles, and he rushed to spread his mission around the known world. His missionary journeys resulted in the foundation of congregations in Athens, Thessalonica, Corinth, Ephesus, Lystra, and Berea. Paul preached only in the towns and cities that Christianity had not reached. He would start preaching in synagogues to the city's Jewish community, whom he tried to persuade into believing Christ was the Savior promised in the Old Testament. But more often than not, his preaching to the Jews resulted in trouble. He met the most vigorous opposition in Corinth, where he spent 18 months preaching. He had more success with the Gentiles in Corinth than with the Jews and found followers there. St. Paul wrote many letters to the Christian communities he founded. In these letters, we can see how he shaped the early Christian church. He was not only spreading the gospel, he also organized the internal works of the churches he left behind. In his letters, he wrote about deep theological themes, but he was also concerned with the details of the life of his Christian communities. Thanks to St. Paul and his efforts to allow the conversion of the Gentiles, Christianity started spreading rapidly. Around 59, Paul wrote that he had exhausted his abilities in the Eastern Mediterranean and wanted to travel farther west. His new goal was Spain. Spain was the center of Roman life in the Western Mediterranean and a perfect spot to start spreading Christianity. It is not known if Paul ever reached Spain. He might have gone there, but soon turned back to Jerusalem to bring the alms for the poor he had collected. Perhaps he never even arrived in Spain and decided to go to Jerusalem directly from Rome. Whatever the case, Paul took the opportunity to give his final thoughts on the matters of the church's division between the Jews and the Gentiles. He wrote his famous epistle to the Romans, reflecting on the problem of the Jewish law against the gospel. He was eager to clear any reservations the Jewish Christians still had toward the Gentiles. He wanted a unified church and the undisturbed spread of the gospel worldwide. The essence of Paul's belief was later described in the epistle to the Ephesians, which was probably written by one of his disciples. In it, he expresses his thought of one Lord, one faith, one baptism. In other words, a perfectly unified church. But while in Jerusalem, Paul was recognized by some of the Jews, who saw him as a threat to their faith. They accused him of betrayal and demanded his life. A Roman tribune arrested Paul, thus saving his life. Although he was safe, he had to spend the next 2 years under house arrest in Rome. Rome then raised another accusation against Paul. They needed Paul as a scapegoat for Rome's troubles with the Christians. Pagan Rome could not allow the spread of the new uniform version of Judaism because it threatened the Roman social order. Paul was eventually sentenced to death in Rome and was beheaded. Legend has it that his head bounced 3 times. Each time it touched the earth, a spring was formed. The church raised St. Paul at the 3 Fountains on the presumed spot of Paul's execution. Paul may not have been one of the 12 apostles, but he was instrumental in developing Christian institutions. All Christians believed the church was a gift given to humanity by God. Their sense of community and belonging was a miraculous act of the Holy Spirit. St. Paul reinforced this belief in the supernatural origin of the church. He described it as a new Eve, a wife of Jesus, Christ's body, or a garden that the apostles and his followers watered. The early church was very much oriented toward Jesus Christ, which can be seen in its 2 most important rituals, the Eucharist and baptism. He was the first to bring up the subject of the church's organization. In his words, "And God has placed in the church first of all apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then miracles, then gifts of healing, of helping, of guidance, and of different kinds of tongues." 1 Corinthians 12:28. According to Paul, the church was founded by Jesus on the apostolic ministry. They had the authority and they demanded the obedience of their followers. But they never acted alone. Instead, they relied on the fellowship of the whole Christian community. Paul also believed in the constant connection apostles had with each other and the connection any church had with Jerusalem. Thus, he thought that Jerusalem had primacy among the churches and that it could act as the mother church. But above even the churches and the apostles was the gospel. It was the thing that mattered the most, and no one had authority over it. It belonged to everyone, and it was for everyone to share. But Paul's vision of church authority was not long-living. It relied on apostles, who were mortals, and on the immediate end of the world and the second coming of Jesus. But when all the apostles died, the church found itself at a crossroads where many decisions needed to be made. The church had to reorganize itself and adapt to the political and social trends. Eventually, the church settled on a three-tiered structure consisting of a bishop, priest, and deacon. Later, with the rise of Protestantism, the church further divided into the many different denominations we find today. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the apostles, check out our book, Church History, a captivating guide to the history of the Christian church, including events of the Crusades, the missionary journeys of Paul, the conversion of Constantine, and more. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.